So there's technologies that are really powerful and they're great, but they're not fun to use. Claude is actually kind of fun to use.
Pretty exciting to have a fully functional multiplayer online game with semi-complex objectives and everything without opening VS Code and within probably about 6 hours.
When we debug something, like we would throw it in a debugger and we would like put breakpoints and we'd look at values. And Claude is like, oh no, I'm not dealing with any of that.
When it is a turtle on its back, it doesn't always tell you. It just keeps trying.
Hello, I'm Scott, and this is the Code Cognition podcast, and we are back for another recording. Today, we are going to talk with one of our teams from a recent hackathon we did at Olio Apps. About a week ago, we did a hackathon, and this time the topic was games, and it's like the first time that we've done let's just do something just for fun, purely entertainment, and it was really fun to see everybody's contributions. Everyone was really creative, and we had a lot of cool, fun games. And today I have Ben, Mukhtar, and Todd with me to talk about their game. Uh, and I won't ruin the surprise. I will let Ben kick it off and tell us more about his game.
Yeah, let's talk about the game, which is called Breaking the Louvre. And so this was inspired by some recent events in the news where a couple of folks, maybe two or three, broke into the Louvre and attempted to steal the crown of Empress Eugenie. And we thought that was kind of interesting. You know, we are fans of such top-down games as Grand Theft Auto, the original ones before it went all 3D and immersive, and Hotline Miami. And so we thought it would be fun to make a game where you are three thieves who are breaking into the Louvre, attempting to find the crown, attempting to find the password for the security system, locating the security system, and wiping out all of the records of like the recordings from the camera, and then escaping with the loot. This is an unusual sort of multiplayer online game in that it is for exactly three people. So right now we built this such that there aren't multiple game sessions. We were a little bit crunched for time, honestly. Well, I think I'm burying the lead here. A big part of what was interesting and fun about this project was that we used Claude for everything. So before we began development, this is what we had. And these are some assets that I built on the bus ride from my house to downtown. So we have some sprites and our command center and the sticky note with the password on it, a bench and the crown and stuff like that.
Did you guys come up with the idea like the day before, or?
I'd say we came up with the idea probably like a week before.
Okay.
And then we kind of just noodled on it, and it changed a little bit as we thought about it.
I should also explain that the hackathon is like a 1 day thing, except for this time we said everybody like go ahead and discuss amongst yourselves and prepare like your team, and you can talk about it beforehand, and then just actual coding the day of. But it's only 1 day, and then the everybody has until like 4 p.m. to get everything ready. So that is the context of the hackathon challenge. You have to have something ready by 4 o'clock in 1 day. So it's a little bit of a different mode than standard software development.
Yeah, and we did not initialize our repo until 9 a.m. the day of the hackathon. So everything that we had done in preparation was sort of like pre-code. And we decided that we were going to let Claude build everything, see if we could build a game completely agentically with no branches, with very little planning and very few rules to how we collaborated. So I want to make some space for other people to talk about the project and their contributions to it. But I think a good place to start here would be a live demo. So this is our deployed site. So I don't know if you can hear that, but we produced a couple of tracks for this game during the hackathon timeframe, which were all created by Suno. So all of this is AI-generated music inspired by like the old 70s crime movies, Italian crime movies, stuff like that. I'm going to be Mr. Pink, Todd will be Mr. Green, and Mukhtar will be Mr. Blue. So I'm going to load right into the game right now. And we should see all three of us. Yeah, Green Ace the Infamous. So what we're going to do here is, first of all, try not to get killed by guards or captured by guards. And that happens simply by running into them. We can kill the guards. Oh no, I got caught immediately.
Mr. President.
That'll make it easier for me to explain what these guys are doing. We would love to make a better screen for once you're gone, you could follow other people. We didn't quite get to that yet. But I'll point out some of the things in the minimap here. The red square is where you find the password. The yellow square is where you find the crown. The orange square is where you find the control room. All right, let me just try to restart and see if I can just pop back into the same game. Yeah, oh, all right, cool. Cheating a little bit, but let's get back into the game so we can demo this. So I'm gonna try to sneak past these guys. Let's see if we can get all this stuff together. There were some funny things that happened along the way. It was really difficult to get some of the collision mechanics to work as we expected. Even more difficult was getting the bullets to fire properly. It would often, all right, there we go. We picked up the crown. What Claude wanted to do, and because we weren't editing the code ourselves, it was mostly a matter of like trial and error and communication with Claude. The AI would want to just like put the bullet on the ground in front of them, which, you know, doesn't do much to take down enemies. All right, we got the password.
Oh, I got the sticky note.
Oh, you got it. Nice. And then
So is the actual password Lou?
yeah. And that's because my mom sent me a Facebook news article that said that the actual security password for the Louvre was the word Louvre. Now, in hindsight, I'm not sure that that was real news, but it's funny. Anyway, all right, and here's the exit. So this blue room appeared, and we escaped. So now, hopefully, the other guys can escape too. All right, we got 2 people escaped. 1 more coming.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. And that's it. There are some end game conditions that we didn't have time to complete, but it was pretty awesome, pretty exciting to have a fully functional multiplayer online game with, you know, animated sprites and with, you know, shooting mechanics and all of that, with, you know, semi-complex objectives and everything without opening VS Code, and within, you know, when you subtract lunch and everything, probably about 6 hours.
Yeah. By when in the day did you have something semi-playable?
Within like the first hour, we had a very playable thing, and then it slowed down. Like the first hour, 2 hours, we made the most progress, and then everything started slowing down with some of the more complicated features.
Yeah, and certainly by the end of the day, I think the cutoff time was 3:45, and that's when you really start to feel your lack of control when you're waiting for Claude to execute a command for you, and it's thinking and thinking, and then it does it wrong, and you go, okay, we have 10 minutes left, so please get it right this time. And you just don't have any control over what's happening. So if it gets it right, that's cool.
I'd say the nice part about that too is like you're waiting for Claude a lot, so you have time to actually do design and collaborate and talk about what's next while Claude is coding away, which is pretty fun. Also, like there were some surprises, like you built those as SVGs and imported them, and it's text, so it was like, hey, I wonder if Claude can actually manipulate these. And so we asked, hey, Claude, like just make a different sprite based on this, and we got some very scary Cronenberg-esque sprites coming out. That what Claude's approximation of a human sitting down from standing up. It was very entertaining.
Do you have any of those Claude interpretations?
I think we deleted all of those, but you know, while we're
Too scary to keep.
yeah, they were scary. But while we're talking, I just asked Claude Code to make them cooler. So I'm curious to see what it'll do with that.
How did you guys structure? Well, how did you structure the team? How who worked on what, and how did you structure the day?
I I would say Todd and I had the most overlap. Todd was, more focused on the back end. I was more focused on the front end, and Mukhtar was more focused on deployment, CI, sort of DevOpsy stuff, and also doing some fantastic recordings and audio stuff. So by the time Mukhtar came in to do that stuff, we had a totally silent game, and it really transforms a game to have like sound effects and music in there.
Yeah, that pumping soundtrack is one of my favorite parts about it. It's like it gets your adrenaline going. Like, okay, I'm in there. Better steal the stuff before I get killed.
I had a tiny little bit of overlap. It was mostly, it wasn't really with Todd or Ben. It was mostly with Claude. I kept kind of breaking the deployment in the same way, and eventually I was like, Claude, you have got to stop, doing this. Just leave this part of the code base alone. I know it's a problem. Just please leave it alone. And then, Claude kind of got the message, thankfully.
The Claude listen, that's good.
Yeah, some of the small things were really great. Like you'd say, "Hey, implement physics," and it would just like, not even a small thing, it would just do it, and it was amazing. And then we had this shared package that was just like data models and a config, just simple exported like TypeScript files. And Claude spent about 15 minutes trying to link them together and fix them, and just kept running into issues. And it's like a software developer that just can't get by just a very simple problem, and it was kind of running into that over and over again.
Yeah, it's so intelligent. I mean, I use that in quotes. We used packages like Phaser.js and Calicius in this project, packages that we never opened the docs. We didn't understand them at all. We let Claude run with that ball, and Claude was able to implement things really, really effectively. And so that's what I would consider like fairly complicated and would take me a long time to master those docs and implement something there. But then you would give it a very simple task, like initially the bullets were coming out of the person's chest. And then it was like, all right, just move it over to the right a little bit. And the ways it would interpret that were so surprising and not at all right.
Yeah, move it over to the right a little bit. That could mean a lot of things.
Well, and classically, like when we debug something, like we would throw it in a debugger and we would like put breakpoints and
Hmm.
we'd look at values. And Claude is like, oh no, I'm not dealing with any of that. I'm just going to throw a console log in, and then I'm going to read the output when I run the server. I'm going to look at the console log and see if it worked, which is kind of an ingenious way to do it. And it can do that at like lightning speed. So like it would come up with ways to debug the non-traditional ways. I thought it was very fascinating.
Yeah, it is really cool to see how that loop can close, like, or it's able to close that loop itself. Sometimes it can't. And especially with things, we have another project where we have like deployed lambdas, and so Claude isn't as able to close that loop. Or when you're doing things that have to do with UI and don't have like a tangible like data return, something that it can say, okay, I messed up, and then you have to be the one sort of like holding two power lines together to complete the circuit, right?
For me, Claude was a lot like, it was a lot like the blind leading the blind, to be honest. For me, I don't really do a lot of game dev. All of this stuff was, it was really fun. I learned a lot, but I didn't really know how to debug Claude, like generally the way I use AI is like, it's like a junior developer that's like a junior, but like at everything. And, the thing is they just know everything, but none of it, they're like very, they're not very mature at any of it. And when I'm kind of in that state too, it becomes a little bit, it was really hard to kind of extend Claude on some topics for me.
That can lead to a lot of wasted time, which we learned. I think like I have really enjoyed working with Claude Code, and it can often be an enormous time saver. But then there are other times where now I've spent an hour doing a task that could have taken me 15 minutes if I had just done it myself. And that skill to know when it makes sense to use Claude and when it doesn't, and how to give a narrow enough context for Claude to be able to actually function. Because when it is a turtle on its back, it doesn't always tell you. It just keeps trying.
Yeah, it's not always self-aware. Cool. I think you guys used a backend. What did you guys use any frameworks or libraries?
Yeah, Claude picked some good ones. I think it used Phaser and what was the back end multiplayer?
Felicius.
Yeah, Calisius.
Okay, so you guys didn't pick Calicius or Phaser. It's just like Claude Code was like, I'll use that.
Well, that was an interesting process too. We began by describing the game to Claude and said, "All right, well, what do you suggest for tech stack? What do you suggest for how to break this out for three devs? Who can do what and how we get this done within an 8-hour time frame?" And it did a relatively good job at the time management part. There were some issues with that, but it did a great job with the tech stack, and it was able to give a top 2 or 3 packages for any given piece of it. And we could have used like a number of different things for the front end or back end game dev stuff in terms of packages, but then it would give you a rationale as to why it chose one, and then it put together the tech stack. Originally it wanted us to split front end and back end into 2 different deployment services, and we asked it to throw it all into Railways. So by the end, it was a negotiation between us and Claude, but we ended up with something that was simplified for us, but also something that it knew how to implement.
Awesome. How did the deployment go? Mukhtar, I think you worked on that.
Deployment went pretty well. We used Railway, basically essentially just 2 EC2 machines. They describe them as nodes, but yeah, under the hood just some EC2s, and there was a little bit of trouble getting them to talk to each other. I really wanted to use their private subnet to do it and stuff like that. I wanted to play around with it, and it was fun. But overall, that was a great developer experience. It was my first time using Railway. And yeah, I think I'm probably gonna start using that a little bit more for my personal projects. It was just so like painless.
I think the interesting thing about using Claude that kind of surprised me is there's technologies that are really powerful and they're great, but they're not fun to use. Claude is actually kind of fun to use. It's fun because it accepts a wide array of like inputs and you can tell it to do some interesting things or kind of unlock your creativity a little bit. It can also be frustrating, but yeah, that was a big surprise.
I think we mentioned, but while you're waiting for Claude to do its thinking, which can take a while, especially when you're sitting together in a room, it's a great time to talk about what your plan is. You're waiting for it to finish a task, and you can have a conversation. Which when you're really in the flow of development, you don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. You can kind of pull up from the weeds and look at the forest from the trees a little bit.
We don't have to dive into it, but Ben, do you have the code? Because there's an interesting phenomenon of if you point Claude at a problem and you tell it to do something, that happens, and visually it might be a little interesting to see.
Well, and as we were talking, Claude finished refactoring the SVGs,
Oh,
and I had a little preview of it.
Let's see what happens.
It's wonky.
A little live coding here. Live vibe coding
Yeah.
here.
oh my
Oh
God.
wow.
This is our guy now.
Okay.
But
Oh,
when he shoots, he turns back into the old guy because Claude didn't realize that was the same part of the same sprite.
They look like walking socks.
Yeah, it's very silly, but this is a great example of the kind of sort of like it gets lost in the weeds. It doesn't understand the like bigger context of what you're asking it to do. All right, so I guess it didn't change anything else, just the people, but and the bullet which goes sideways.
the bullets are kind of like these flat,
I think if they turned them around, they would look good, but
amazing.
sideways bullet.
I thought it was interesting because the way that it's structured and you ask Claude to do things. I think we have 3 or 4 files, and that all of the game code is in 3 or 4 files. And I was noticing towards the end of the hackathon, it was kind of tense because we had a couple big bugs that we were trying to finish, and
Yeah.
the larger the files, the longer it takes Claude, the more stressed you get as the time goes down. So we have these large, I think game scene is
Some of them
the
aren't
big
too
one.
bad. Yeah, this one's huge though.
And it Claude loads the file in, but it takes 5 minutes to just understand context, and then it has to. So Claude will let you paint yourself into a corner where it is extremely inefficient and it can't really help you anymore. So you kind of have to be smart to outmaneuver it so it doesn't do that to you.
And how do you do that, Todd?
You tell it, hey, things are slowing down. Split out all the code into separate files so you can process it better. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then it's great. Then it does it. But if you don't do that, like if you don't have some type of vision, or you can even direct it and say, hey, I'm running into this problem. Claude, what do we do? And it could probably do it. But it doesn't choose its own objectives. And that can be really powerful, and that can also be a drawback.
But can also be helpful. I mean, if you have a clear sense of those kinds of conventions that you want Claude to maintain at the very outset of a project, you can create documentation for Claude and say, all right, in general, a file shouldn't be larger than X, it shouldn't be doing more than Y things within one method, or any of these kinds of things. But you do, as Todd implied, like need to be very explicit with it, like what you want it to do. Otherwise, it'll just do whatever's easiest for it.
I think if we had 24 hours, taking some pre-planning time and planning out the architecture to streamline Claude, I think we would have got, as because we got so much done in those first 2 hours and it started slowing down. I think we would have been able to keep that productivity throughout the whole day.
Recently, I was working on, so this was actually after the hackathon. I had to do something that was just a little bit repetitive at work. So I went ahead and did it anyway. And my objective was to kind of like do it, myself, see how long it would take me. And then I wanted to, have Claude do the same thing. It was a very monotonous task. And, I couldn't really use the VS Code, kind of replace functionality to achieve it. There was a little bit of involvement, but it wasn't bad at all. So doing it myself, it was around, I think I needed to refactor around 90 test files. And essentially it took me around 30 seconds per file. At the end, it wasn't I guess it is a big time sink, but it wasn't, the end of the world. But definitely not fun. So finally, I had Claude try to do the same thing. It did a great job with, kind of like doing it, but I eventually but my test files they're about 400 to 600 lines each on average. So with Claude, it eventually after like 20 of them, it ran out of it ran out of session tokens. I'm on the mid-tier plan. Maybe I gotta pay for the $100 one. It's really interesting you say that, Todd, because the tests are like as practically as modular as I can make them. And this is the issue we run into all the time, where something changes in like the React context, and then we have to update all the tasks.
Cool. Well, any advice for future hackathon participants and Claude Code users?
My advice is to learn what Claude Code is good at, and learn its features, because if you just try to talk to it like it's another person, you're going to be in for some disappointments. But if you learn how to talk to it and you learn slash commands and sub agents and all these things and the documentation that can support it, you'll have a much better time.
Yeah, I think just do it. Just jump in. Because yeah, just do it. Like, we didn't open the code editor once, and that was the goal. It was like, let's get a functional thing with just directing Claude. I was getting so lazy towards the end. I was just saying, hey, start the server Claude. Hey, open the PR Claude. Hey, just merge stuff in, because I just wanted to see what the limits were, and it surprised me how far out those limits actually are. So just do it.
Awesome. Well,
I mean, maybe sometimes you don't want to use Claude.
True.
yep. When Claude gets stuck in a doom loop, gonna break out of Claude. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you later.